My mother-in-law gifted every grandkid an iPhone 17 Pro Max, except my daughter. She's adopted, she said. I cut her off instantly. Now, she'll never meet my newborn son. You know that moment when someone shows you exactly who they are and you can never unsee it? When a single sentence shatters your entire perception of a person you thought you knew. That's what happened to me 3 years ago on what should have been a normal Sunday family dinner. My mother-in-law said 7 words to my 8-year-old daughter that changed our family forever. I'm David, I'm 39 years old, and I'm a software engineer living in Portland, Oregon. My wife, Rebecca, is 38 and works as a pediatric nurse. We've been married for 11 years, and for the past 9 of those years, we've been parents to the most incredible little girl you could ever meet. Her name is Sophie, and she came into our lives when she was just 6 months old, through adoption. But to my mother-in-law, Patricia, Sophie would never be enough. She would never be real family. And on that Sunday evening in October, Patricia made absolutely certain that Sophie and everyone else in that room knew exactly how she felt. This is the story of how a grandmother's cruelty toward an innocent child tore a family apart. It's about the boundaries we set to protect the people we love. And it's about the consequences that follow when someone refuses to acknowledge they've done something unforgivably wrong. To understand how we got here, I need to take you back to the beginning. Rebecca and I met in college, got married right after graduation, and like a lot of young couples, we assumed starting a family would happen naturally when we were ready. We spent our 20s building our careers, buying our first house, creating the life we wanted. When Rebecca turned 30, we decided it was time. Except it didn't happen. Month after month, negative pregnancy tests. A year passed, then 2. We went through all the testing, fertility specialists, hormone treatments, 3 rounds of IVF that drained our savings and our emotional reserves. Each failure was devastating. Each one took a piece of Rebecca's confidence, her hope. I watched my vibrant, optimistic wife become someone I barely recognized, someone haunted by what her body couldn't do. Patricia's response to our struggles was complicated. On the surface, she was supportive. She'd hug Rebecca, say all the right things about God's timing and medical miracles. But there were other comments, too. Little jabs disguised as concern. You know, my cousin's daughter tried for 7 years and finally gave up. Maybe you're just not meant to be parents. Or, have you considered that perhaps you're too stressed? Rebecca, you work such long hours at that hospital. Maybe if you just relaxed more. Rebecca's father, Harold, was kinder. He'd tell Patricia to back off, that the kids would figure it out. But Patricia had very specific ideas about how things should be, and she wasn't shy about sharing them. After the 3rd failed IVF, Rebecca came home from another appointment and just broke down. I can't do this anymore, she sobbed in my arms. I can't keep putting my body through this. I can't keep failing at the one thing I want most in the world. That's when we started seriously discussing adoption. For me, it felt right immediately. I'd always believed that family isn't just about biology, it's about love, commitment, showing up every single day. But Rebecca needed time to grieve the biological children we wouldn't have, to reimagine what our family would look like. When we finally told Patricia and Harold that we were pursuing adoption, Patricia's smile was tight. Well, if that's what you feel you need to do, she said, as if we were making a frivolous purchase rather than expanding our family. I just hope you know what you're getting into. You never really know what you're getting with adopted children. Their genetics, their background. Rebecca's brother, James, and his wife, Nicole, had 2 boys at the time, Tyler, who was 5, and Logan, who was 3. Patricia absolutely doted on them. Every visit to their house, she'd have new toys waiting, homemade cookies, elaborate day trips planned. She'd post dozens of photos on Facebook with captions like, "My precious grandbabies," and "Being Nana is my greatest blessing." Rebecca's sister, Amanda, had a daughter, Lily, who was 4. Patricia was equally devoted to her. The favoritism toward James and Amanda's kids was already apparent, but we attributed it to the fact that they lived closer, saw Patricia more often. The adoption process took 9 months. We worked with a local agency, went through all the home studies and training, and finally got the call we'd been waiting for. A baby girl, born 6 weeks premature to a young mother who'd made the incredibly brave decision to place her for adoption. We met Sophie on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. She was so tiny, barely 5 pounds, with this tuft of dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. I fell in love instantly, completely, irrevocably, forever. When they placed her in my arms, something shifted in my chest, like a lock clicking into place. This was my daughter, not biologically, but in every way that mattered. Rebecca was more tentative at first, not because she didn't love Sophie, but because she was terrified of losing her. The adoption wouldn't be finalized for 6 months, and until then, there was always a chance the birth mother could change her mind. Every day, Rebecca was waiting for someone to take Sophie away. When we brought Sophie home, Patricia and Harold came to visit. Harold was wonderful. He held Sophie, cooed at her, told her she was beautiful. Patricia was distant. She held Sophie for maybe 30 seconds, commented that she was very small, and then handed her back. She spent most of the visit giving us unsolicited advice about parenting that felt more critical than helpful. "You know, adopted children often have attachment issues," she said, watching me feed Sophie a bottle. "You'll need to be very careful about bonding. It's not like when it's your own child." Rebecca stiffened beside me. "She is our own child, Mom." "You know what I mean," Patricia said dismissively. Over the next few years, Patricia's attitude toward Sophie never really warmed. She'd remember birthdays and Christmas, send gifts, but they were always noticeably less thoughtful or expensive than what Tyler, Logan, and Lily received. Where the other grandkids got elaborate play sets and bicycles, Sophie got generic toys that felt like afterthoughts. Patricia never offered to babysit Sophie, despite regularly taking the other grandchildren for weekend sleepovers. "Oh, Sophie's so young. I wouldn't want to overwhelm her," she'd say. Then the excuse became, "She's not used to me. She might get scared." Eventually, she stopped making excuses at all. Rebecca noticed. How could she not? But she made excuses for her mother. Patricia was getting older. She was set in her ways. She'd come around eventually. Besides, Rebecca and her mother had always had a complicated relationship. Patricia was controlling, judgmental, and had very specific ideas about how her children should live their lives. Rebecca had spent most of her life trying to earn her mother's approval. I noticed too, and it infuriated me. But I held my tongue mostly because Rebecca wasn't ready to confront it. And Sophie was happy. She was thriving. She was brilliant and funny and kind, excelling in school, making friends easily. She had us, and she had Harold, who treated her with the same love he showed all his grandchildren. That seemed like enough. But children notice things. By the time Sophie was 6, she'd started asking questions. "Why doesn't Grandma Patricia take me to the zoo like she takes Tyler and Logan? Why does Grandma Patricia hug Lily so much, but not me?" Rebecca would make excuses, her voice strained. "Grandma's just not feeling well today. Grandma's busy, sweetie." But I could see the toll it was taking on both of them. Fast forward to October, 3 years ago. Sophie was 8 years old. We'd just found out Rebecca was pregnant. A complete shock after all those years of infertility, but a joyful one. We decided to wait until after the first trimester to tell family, so we were keeping our secret. Patricia had invited us all to Sunday dinner at her house. These family gatherings happen once a month, and they were typically fine. Awkward sometimes, especially watching Patricia's obvious favoritism, but manageable. Harold was always there to balance things out, and the kids enjoyed playing together. This particular Sunday, Tyler was 13, Logan was 11, and Lily was 9. Sophie had just turned 8 the month before. We arrived around 4 in the afternoon, and immediately I noticed Patricia was in an unusually good mood. She was practically giddy, bustling around the kitchen, telling everyone she had a very special surprise for the grandchildren. During dinner, Patricia kept checking her phone, smiling secretively. The kids were picking up on her energy, getting excited. "What's the surprise, Nana?" Tyler kept asking. "You'll see soon enough." Patricia would sing-song back. After we'd finished eating and Harold had cleared the plates, Patricia stood up dramatically. "Okay, my darling grandchildren, I have something very exciting for you. Wait here." She disappeared into her bedroom and returned carrying a large shopping bag. The Apple logo was visible on the side. My stomach dropped a little. I knew whatever was in that bag was expensive, and I had a sinking feeling about where this was going. "Now," Patricia announced, "I know you've all been working so hard in school, and I'm so proud of each and every one of you. So I wanted to do something special." She reached into the bag and pulled out a sleek box. "Tyler, this is for you." Tyler's eyes went huge. "No way. Nana, is that the iPhone 17 Pro Max?" Patricia crowed. "Brand new, just released. The best phone money can buy for my best grandson." Tyler was already ripping open the box, his hands shaking with excitement. The adults were exchanging glances. That phone cost well over $1,000. But Patricia was already pulling out another box. "And Logan, here's yours. And Lily, this one's for you." The room erupted in chaos. All three kids were squealing, thanking Nana profusely, examining their new phones with awe. James and Amanda were thanking Patricia too, though I could hear the slight awkwardness in their voices. These were extravagant gifts, even by Patricia's standards. Sophie was sitting next to me at the table, and I watched her face carefully. She was smiling, happy for her cousins, but I could see the anticipation building in her eyes. She was waiting. Surely Nana had gotten her one too, right? There were 4 grandchildren. For phones. Patricia was basking in the gratitude, helping the kids set up their phones, showing them features. Rebecca had gone very still beside me, her hand finding mine under the table. She was thinking the same thing I was. After about 10 minutes, Sophie finally worked up the courage to speak. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Grandma Patricia, did you maybe forget mine?" The room went quiet. Every adult turned to look at Sophie, then at Patricia. Patricia looked at Sophie with this expression I'll never forget. Cold, almost annoyed that she'd been interrupted. "Excuse me." Sophie's cheeks were turning red, but she pressed on, her voice even smaller now. "The iPhone? Did you get one for me too? You got one for Tyler and Logan and Lily." Patricia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Sophie, sweetie, these phones are for my real grandchildren. You wouldn't understand, but these are very special gifts for my own family." The words hung in the air like poison. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Sophie's face crumpled. But I'm your granddaughter, too?" "You're Rebecca's adopted child," Patricia said, her tone matter-of-fact, as if she were explaining basic math to a slow student. "It's not the same thing, dear. These phones are expensive, and they're for my actual grandchildren. You have parents who can buy you your own phone if they want." I watched my daughter's heart break in real time. Her eyes filled with tears, her mouth trembling as she tried desperately not to cry in front of everyone. She looked at Rebecca, then at me, silently begging us to fix this, to make it not true. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was white-hot, all-consuming. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "What the hell did you just say?" My voice came out as a growl. Patricia had the audacity to look surprised. "David, I don't appreciate that tone. What you just said to my daughter." I couldn't even finish the sentence. I was shaking. Rebecca was already on her feet, pulling Sophie into her arms. Sophie had started crying, quiet sobs that shook her small shoulders. "We're leaving," Rebecca said, her voice deadly calm. "Right now." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Sophie's old enough to understand that. She's 8 years old." Rebecca's voice cracked. She's 8 years old, and you just told her she's not real family. In front of everyone. James stood up. Mom, that was really inappropriate. Stay out of this, James, Patricia snapped. This is between me and Rebecca. No, I said, gathering Sophie's jacket. There's nothing between you and Rebecca anymore. We're done here. You're overreacting, Patricia said, but I could hear the first hint of uncertainty in her voice. I was just being honest. The child should know her place. Her place! Rebecca was crying now too, holding Sophie tight. Her place is as our daughter, as part of this family. And you just told her she's not good enough because she wasn't born from my body. Do you have any idea what you've done? Harold had been silent until now, his face pale. Patricia, you need to apologize. Right now. I will not. Patricia drew herself up. I told the truth. That child is not my blood. I'm under no obligation to treat her the same as my real grandchildren. That was it. That was the moment I knew we would never come back from this. We're leaving, I said quietly. Sophie, honey, let's go. Say goodbye to Grandpa Harold. Sophie clung to Rebecca, her face buried in her mother's shoulder, her whole body shaking with sobs. Harold came over, his eyes glistening with tears, and gently touched Sophie's hair. I love you, sweetheart, he whispered. I'm so sorry. We left, James and Amanda, and their kids were frozen in shock. Patricia was still standing in her dining room, arms crossed, jaw set stubbornly as we walked out of her house. The drive home was silent except for Sophie's crying from the back seat. When we got home, Rebecca carried Sophie inside, took her to bed, and lay with her until she cried herself to sleep. I stood in our kitchen, hands braced on the counter, trying to process what had just happened. The cruelty of it, the deliberateness. Patricia hadn't made a mistake or said something thoughtless in the heat of the moment. She'd planned this. She'd bought 3 phones, specifically excluding Sophie, and then said those words to an 8-year-old child's face. When Rebecca finally came downstairs, her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. We stood there looking at each other, and I knew we were both thinking the same thing. She's never going to apologize, Rebecca said finally. No, I agreed. She's not. I don't know if I can forgive this. I know I can't. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Rebecca had finally stopped crying, we sat down and had one of the most difficult conversations of our marriage. Rebecca was torn apart, caught between her daughter and her mother, between her role as a parent and her role as a child. She's my mom, Rebecca kept saying, her voice breaking. I know she's wrong. I know what she did was horrible, but she's still my mom. And Sophie is your daughter, I said gently. Your real daughter, not adopted daughter, just daughter. And your mother just told her she's not good enough, not worthy, not really family. Can you forgive that? Rebecca was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she whispered finally. I don't know if I can, but I also don't know how to cut my mother out of my life. Then we don't decide that tonight, I said. But we do need to set boundaries immediately. Sophie needs to know we're protecting her, that we choose her without question or hesitation. We agreed on immediate rules. No more family gatherings at Patricia's house. No unsupervised contact between Patricia and Sophie. And most importantly, no reconciliation unless Patricia genuinely apologized directly to Sophie and acknowledged her as a full member of the family. The next morning, Rebecca called her mother. I sat beside her, holding her hand as she laid out our boundaries. I could hear Patricia's voice through the phone, high-pitched and defensive. You're being ridiculous, Patricia said. I won't apologize for being honest. That child needs to understand reality. Her name is Sophie, Rebecca said, her voice shaking but firm. And she's your granddaughter. If you can't see that, then we have nothing more to discuss. Don't you dare threaten me, Rebecca Lynn. It's not a threat, Mom. It's a boundary. You don't get to hurt my daughter and face no consequences. Patricia hung up on her. Within an hour, Rebecca's phone was blowing up. James was calling, Amanda was calling, Patricia was texting increasingly angry messages. The family narrative Patricia was spinning was predictable. Rebecca was being overdramatic and ungrateful. Sophie was fine. Children are resilient. Everyone was overreacting. Patricia had just been honest about her feelings, which was her right as the grandmother and the one who'd paid for the phones. James tried to mediate. Look, Mom definitely said it wrong, but you know how she is. She didn't mean to hurt Sophie. Can't you guys just come to Thanksgiving and we'll all move past this? She told Sophie she's not real family, James. To her face, in front of everyone. Which part of that should we move past? Amanda was worse. She called Rebecca crying, saying that Rebecca was tearing the family apart, that their mother was devastated, that Rebecca needed to think about everyone else and not be so selfish. Selfish. Rebecca's voice went ice cold. My 8-year-old daughter sobbed herself to sleep last night because your mother told her she's not good enough to be considered real family, and I'm being selfish for protecting her. Amanda had no response to that. The hardest part was explaining it to Sophie. The next morning at breakfast, she was quiet, pushing her cereal around her bowl. Finally, she looked up at us with red-rimmed eyes. Did I do something wrong? She asked in a tiny voice. Is that why Grandma Patricia doesn't like me? My heart shattered. Rebecca started crying immediately, pulling Sophie into her lap. No, baby, no, Rebecca said fiercely. You didn't do anything wrong. You are perfect. You are our daughter, and we love you more than anything in this world. Then why did she say I'm not real family? How do you explain cruelty to a child? How do you tell them that sometimes people are just mean for no good reason? That sometimes even grandmothers fail to love the way they should? Sometimes, I said carefully, people have wrong ideas about what makes a family. They think it's only about blood, about biology. But that's not true. Family is about love and commitment and showing up for each other every single day. So Grandma Patricia is wrong? Sophie asked. Yes, Rebecca said firmly. She's very, very wrong. And what she said to you was cruel and unfair. Are we not going to see her anymore? Rebecca and I exchanged glances. Not for a while, Rebecca said. Not until she understands that what she did was wrong and apologizes to you properly. Sophie was quiet, processing this. Then, good. I don't want to see her. She's mean. Out of the mouths of babes. Over the next few weeks, the family pressure intensified. Patricia started a campaign on social media, posting vague status updates about ungrateful children and family betrayal. She'd share memories of Rebecca's childhood with captions like, I gave her everything, and this is how she repays me. She never mentioned the actual incident, of course. In her version, Rebecca had suddenly and inexplicably cut her off over a simple misunderstanding. She positioned herself as the victim, the loving grandmother cruelly denied access to her grandchildren. Some of Rebecca's extended family members, people who didn't know the full story, reached out to ask what was going on. When Rebecca explained, most immediately sided with us. A few distant relatives tried to play peacemaker, suggesting that Patricia had just been raised different or didn't understand adoption, and that Rebecca should be more understanding. Rebecca shut that down fast. My daughter was told to her face that she's not real family. There's no cultural misunderstanding or generational gap that makes that okay. Harold called several times. Unlike Patricia, he was genuinely apologetic and distressed. I've tried talking to her, he said to Rebecca, his voice heavy with sadness. She won't budge. She keeps saying she was just being honest, that she shouldn't have to pretend Sophie is the same as the other kids. Dad, Sophie, I guess the same as the other kids, Rebecca said. She's my daughter. I know, sweetheart. I know. I'm so sorry. I should have intervened more over the years. I saw how she treated Sophie differently, and I didn't push back hard enough. Harold became our ally in this. He made it clear to Patricia that he disagreed with her completely, though he wouldn't leave her or choose sides in the way she was demanding everyone else do. He found ways to see Sophie separately, taking her for ice cream or to the park, making sure she knew that he loved her completely and unconditionally. 3 weeks after the incident, Patricia showed up at our house unannounced. Rebecca and I had just gotten home from work, and Sophie was at an after-school program. When I opened the door and saw Patricia standing there with a wrapped box, my jaw clenched. "I need to speak with Rebecca," Patricia announced, pushing past me into our house. Rebecca came out of the kitchen, her face going pale when she saw her mother. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Patricia held up the box. "I've come to smooth things over. I brought Sophie a phone, see? So now everyone has one, and we can put this silly argument behind us." The audacity was breathtaking. "Get out," Rebecca said quietly. "Excuse me." "Get out of my house. Right now." Patricia's expression shifted from fake pleasantness to genuine shock. "Rebecca, don't be ridiculous. I'm trying to fix this. I spent over $1,000. You think a phone fixes what you did?" Rebecca's voice was rising. "You think buying Sophie the same gift you gave the other kids, after publicly humiliating her and calling her not real family, makes everything okay?" "I never said she wasn't family. I said she wasn't my real grandchild, which is simply a fact. It is not a fact." Rebecca was yelling now. "She is your real grandchild. She calls you grandma. She's been part of this family since she was 6 months old. You don't get to decide that biology is the only thing that matters. Keep your voice down, the neighbors will hear. I don't care. I don't care who hears me. You broke my daughter's heart, and you're standing here acting like you're the victim, like spending money is the same as taking responsibility." Patricia's expression hardened. "I came here to apologize, but I can see you're not interested in reconciliation. You're being just as dramatic as you were as a teenager, Rebecca. I thought you'd grown up." "What would you apologize for?" I asked, stepping forward. "Because if you can't even name what you did wrong, an apology is meaningless." Patricia looked at me with barely concealed disdain. "Fine. I'm sorry if Sophie was upset by what I said. I didn't mean to hurt her feelings, but I was simply being honest about our family dynamic. Sorry if—" Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "If she was upset, you told an 8-year-old to her face that she's not your real grandchild. There's no if about how that made her feel." "Well, she isn't." Patricia finally snapped, her mask dropping completely. "She's not my blood. I didn't watch her grow in your belly. I didn't feel her kick. I don't see my family's features in her face. I'm sorry, but I don't feel the same connection to her that I do to my real grandchildren. I've tried, Rebecca, I really have, but it's not the same." The silence that followed was deafening. "Get out," Rebecca whispered. "Get out of my house and don't come back." "Rebecca, I mean it. We're done. You will never see Sophie again, and you'll never meet the baby I'm carrying either." Patricia's eyes widened. "You're pregnant." "Get out." Rebecca screamed. I physically escorted Patricia to the door. She left the iPhone box on our table, still wrapped. As she left, she turned back one more time. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "Family is everything, Rebecca. You'll regret choosing that adopted child over your own mother." I slammed the door in her face. The aftermath of that confrontation was brutal. Patricia immediately went nuclear on social media, posting a long rant about how Rebecca had announced her pregnancy and then cruelly denied Patricia access to her unborn grandchild. She positioned herself as the grieving grandmother, cut off from her daughter and future grandchild over a simple disagreement. The post got a lot of engagement from people who didn't know the full story. Patricia's friends were commenting with supportive messages, telling her to stay strong, that Rebecca would come around eventually. Some even criticized Rebecca by name, calling her ungrateful and disrespectful. Rebecca made her own post, something she'd been avoiding until then. She kept it simple. "When my mother told my 8-year-old daughter to her face in front of the entire family that she wasn't a real grandchild because she's adopted, and then refused to apologize or acknowledge that she'd done anything wrong. I made a choice. I chose my child. I will always choose my child. That's what real mothers do. The response was swift and overwhelming. Rebecca's friends rallied around her, sharing their own stories of family rejection and adoption discrimination. Several people who'd commented on Patricia's post apologized publicly and deleted their supportive comments. A few of Patricia's own friends privately messaged Rebecca with support. Patricia was furious at being publicly shamed and doubled down. She posted screenshots of old conversations with Rebecca, trying to prove what a difficult daughter Rebecca had always been, how Rebecca had always been dramatic and overly sensitive. It was desperate and messy and only made Patricia look worse. James and Amanda were caught in the middle and trying to stay neutral, which in practice meant they sided with Patricia. They still attended her weekly dinners, still brought their kids for visits, still posted happy family photos that noticeably excluded Rebecca, Sophie, and me. This was harder on Rebecca than she wanted to admit. She and James had been close growing up. She'd always looked up to Amanda, watching them choose their mother over doing what was right, watching them continue to expose their children to Patricia's toxic worldview. It hurt. What are they teaching Tyler and Logan and Lily? Rebecca asked me one night, her hand resting on her growing belly, that some family members matter less than others? That adopted kids aren't really part of the family? What happens if one of them wants to adopt someday? There was no good answer. We couldn't control what James and Amanda did. We could only control our own choices and our own family. Sophie, remarkably, seemed okay. She asked about Grandma Patricia less and less as the weeks went by. She was excited about becoming a big sister. She'd talk to Rebecca's belly, read stories to the baby, help us set up the nursery. Harold remained our lifeline to any sort of functional family. He'd visit regularly, always making sure Sophie felt included and loved. He was excited about the new baby too, though Patricia had forbidden him from discussing it with her. "She's making herself miserable," Harold told us during one visit. "She's convinced herself that she's the victim here, that you're punishing her for being honest. She genuinely doesn't understand what she did wrong." "How is that possible?" Rebecca asked. "How can an intelligent woman not understand that telling a child she's not real family is cruel?" Harold sighed heavily. "Your mother has always had a very rigid view of how things should be. Blood family, biological connections, they've always been paramount to her. In her mind, she was just being honest about a hierarchy that seemed obvious to her. That doesn't make it okay, Dad." "I know, sweetheart. I know it doesn't." The pregnancy progressed. Rebecca was due in late April. We found out we were having a boy, which thrilled Sophie. She'd been hoping for a brother. We picked the name Ethan. As Rebecca's due date approached, Patricia's attempts at contact intensified. She'd call from different numbers when Rebecca blocked her. She'd send emails, Facebook messages, letters in the mail. The content was always the same. She wanted to be part of her grandchild's life. She was willing to put aside the issue with Sophie. Couldn't Rebecca see she was being unreasonable? Never an apology. Never an acknowledgement that what she'd said to Sophie was wrong. Just demands for access and accusations of Rebecca being dramatic. "She wants to put aside the issue with Sophie," Rebecca said bitterly, reading yet another email. "Like Sophie is an issue to be put aside. Like my daughter is a problem to be solved or ignored." In March, about a month before Ethan was due, Patricia tried a different tactic. She reached out to our adoption agency, the one we'd worked with to adopt Sophie, claiming she was concerned about Sophie's welfare. She told them that Rebecca was pregnant and she was worried that Sophie would be neglected or abandoned in favor of the biological child. The agency contacted us, confused. They knew us well, knew we were excellent parents, and Patricia's claims were clearly baseless. But they had to follow up. The social worker came to our house, apologetic and embarrassed. She spent about 15 minutes with us, observed Sophie, and concluded that Patricia's report was malicious nonsense. But the whole experience was traumatic and invasive. She called CPS on us, Rebecca said in disbelief after the social worker left. My own mother called child services to try to what? Get Sophie taken away? Scare us into reconciling. I was beyond furious. This wasn't just cruel anymore, it was actively dangerous. A CPS investigation, even a baseless one, could have serious implications. It could affect Rebecca's nursing license. It could traumatize Sophie further. We need a lawyer, I said. We consulted with a family law attorney, explained the situation. The lawyer advised us to document everything, all the texts, emails, social media posts, the CPS call, and consider a restraining order if Patricia's behavior continued to escalate. What she's doing is called harassment, the lawyer explained. And if she's willing to weaponize child services, she might escalate further. You need to protect yourselves legally. We sent Patricia a formal cease and desist letter, drafted by the attorney. It spelled out that any further contact, direct or indirect, would result in legal action. Any further reports to authorities based on false information would be considered harassment, and we would pursue legal consequences. Patricia's response came through her own lawyer. Apparently, she decided to lawyer up too. Her attorney sent a letter claiming that Rebecca was engaging in parental alienation by denying Patricia access to her grandchildren, and that Patricia was within her rights to express concern about Sophie's welfare. It was absurd, but it was also scary. This was escalating in ways we'd never imagined. Ethan was born on April 23rd, weighing 7 pounds 6 ounces, with a head full of dark hair and Rebecca's nose. He was perfect. Sophie was immediately obsessed with her baby brother, wanting to hold him constantly, help with everything. We didn't announce the birth publicly. Harold came to the hospital and a few close friends. But we kept it off social media, specifically to avoid the drama with Patricia. It lasted 3 days before someone, we never found out who, told Patricia. The phone calls started immediately, escalating to showing up at the hospital. Security had to escort her out. She was screaming in the lobby about her rights as a grandmother, about being denied access to her grandchild. It was humiliating and frightening. Rebecca was still recovering from delivery. We had a newborn. And Patricia was causing a scene in a public hospital, being forcibly removed by security. The hospital banned Patricia from the premises. We filed for a temporary restraining order, which was granted based on the hospital incident and the documented harassment. Patricia would have to stay at least 500 feet away from us, our home, our workplaces, and Sophie's school. You'd think this would be a wake-up call. It wasn't. Patricia violated the restraining order within a week. She showed up at Sophie's elementary school during recess, trying to talk to her through the fence. A teacher spotted her and called us immediately. Sophie came home shaken. She'd seen her grandmother shouting her name from the playground, but had run to a teacher as we'd instructed her to do if Patricia ever approached. She kept yelling that she loved me and wanted to see the baby, Sophie told us, her voice small. But she looked really angry, Mom. I was scared. That violation resulted in Patricia spending a night in jail. Harold bailed her out, but he was at the end of his rope. He came to our house the next day, looking 10 years older than he had at Ethan's birth. I don't know what to do anymore, he admitted. She's obsessed. She won't listen to reason. Her lawyer has advised her to stop. I've begged her to stop, but she's convinced that if she just pushes hard enough, you'll cave. We won't, Rebecca said firmly, holding Ethan against her shoulder. Dad, I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, but she brought this on herself. Every single step of the way, she's made it worse. All she had to do was apologize to Sophie. That's it. One genuine apology, and none of this would have happened. I know, Harold said sadly. I know, sweetheart. James and Amanda finally reached out around this time, not to offer support, but to criticize our handling of the situation. You got Mom arrested, James said on the phone, his voice tight with anger. She spent a night in jail, Rebecca. She's 67 years old. She violated a restraining order, Rebecca replied coldly. She showed up at Sophie's school and terrorized her. What did she think would happen? She just wanted to see her grandchildren. Sophie is her grandchild, James. She's always been her grandchild. But Mom told her she wasn't real family. Why is it so hard for you to understand that we're protecting our daughter from someone who hurt her deeply and refuses to acknowledge it? You're being vindictive, Amanda chimed in. Apparently they had Rebecca on speaker. You're using the kids as weapons to punish Mom for one comment she made months ago. One comment. Rebecca's voice went dangerously quiet. She told my 8-year-old daughter, in front of the entire family, that she wasn't a real grandchild. She refused to apologize. She showed up at our house and told me to my face that she doesn't feel connected to Sophie because she's not blood. She called child services with false reports. She violated a restraining order and scared Sophie at her school. Which part of that is one comment? Neither James nor Amanda had a response. You two have made your choice, Rebecca continued. You've chosen to support Mom no matter what she does, no matter who she hurts. I can't stop you, but I can choose not to expose my children to people who think it's okay to treat adopted kids as less than. So unless you're ready to acknowledge that what Mom did was wrong and stop making excuses for her, we don't have anything more to discuss. She hung up. Patricia's lawyer pushed for a hearing to contest the restraining order, arguing that it was excessive and that Patricia had grandparents' rights that were being violated. In Oregon, grandparents can petition for visitation rights in certain circumstances, and Patricia was attempting to use this law to force contact with Sophie and Ethan. Our lawyer was confident we'd win. Grandparents' rights typically only apply in cases of divorce, death of a parent, or situations where the grandparent had an established relationship with a child that was being arbitrarily severed. Patricia's own actions had destroyed her relationship with Sophie, and she'd never had one with Ethan. Still, we had to go to court. We had to face Patricia in a legal setting and argue why she shouldn't be allowed near our children. The hearing was scheduled for June, when Ethan was just 2 months old. We brought him with us because Rebecca was still breastfeeding, and we left Sophie with Harold. No way were we putting her through this. Walking into that courtroom and seeing Patricia sitting there with her lawyer was surreal. She looked smaller, somehow older. But when she saw us, her expression hardened into something cold and righteous. Patricia's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a loving grandmother who'd been cruelly cut off from her grandchildren over a misunderstanding. He argued that Patricia had apologized, she hadn't, that she'd made efforts to reconcile, which our lawyer would easily refute, and that denying a grandparent-grandchild relationship was harmful to the children. When it was our lawyer's turn, she systematically destroyed every argument. She presented the testimony from multiple family members who'd witnessed the iPhone incident, including a written statement from Harold, screenshots of every text message, email, and social media post Patricia had sent the report from the adoption agency about Patricia's false CPS, called the Hospital Security Report, from when Patricia was removed the police report from her violation of the restraining order at Sophie's school. Sophie's own statement, age-appropriate and heartbreaking, about how Grandma Patricia made her feel. Then our lawyer called Rebecca to testify. Rebecca was amazing. She was calm, clear, and devastatingly honest. She walked through years of Patricia's subtle rejection of Sophie, the smaller gifts, the exclusion from activities, the emotional distance. Then she described the iPhone incident in detail, including how Sophie had cried herself to sleep that night. My daughter asked me if she'd done something wrong, Rebecca said, her voice steady but her eyes glistening. She asked me why Grandma Patricia didn't like her. She was 8 years old, and she was trying to figure out what she'd done to deserve being told she wasn't real family. Patricia's lawyer objected several times, trying to characterize Rebecca's testimony as emotional manipulation. The judge overruled him every time. Then it was Patricia's turn to testify. And this is where everything fell apart for her. Under oath, Patricia couldn't help herself. When asked about the iPhone incident, she said, "I bought phones for my biological grandchildren. I didn't think Sophie would understand that these were special gifts for my real family." Our lawyer pounced. "To be clear, Mrs. Harrison, you're saying that Sophie, who has been part of your family for 9 years, is not real family?" "She's adopted," Patricia said, as if this explained everything. "It's not the same as my own grandchildren." "Your Honor," our lawyer said, "I think Mrs. Harrison is making our case for us." The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Mrs. Harrison, do you understand why your daughter might want to protect Sophie from this attitude?" Patricia actually looked confused. "I've never been anything but honest with Sophie. Children need to understand their place in the family structure." "And what place is that?" the judge asked. "She's Rebecca's daughter. She's part of Rebecca's immediate family. But she's not my granddaughter in the same way my son's children are. It's just biology. It's not personal." The judge sat back, her expression unreadable. "It seems quite personal to Sophie." Our lawyer presented more evidence. Patricia's refusal to ever keep Sophie overnight despite regularly having the other grandchildren for sleepovers. Patricia's comments over the years about adoption being risky and adopted children having issues. Patricia's own admissions that she didn't feel connected to Sophie. Then came the coup de grace. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that Patricia had a right to a relationship with Ethan, since her issues were only with Sophie. "So, you're arguing," the judge clarified, "that Mrs. Harrison should have access to the biological grandchild while continuing to reject the adopted grandchild." Patricia's lawyer realized too late that this was a trap. "That's not exactly what we're saying, Your Honor." "It seems exactly what you're saying. You're arguing that Mrs. Harrison's discriminatory treatment of one grandchild shouldn't prevent her from having a relationship with another grandchild." Our lawyer stood. "Your Honor, Sophie and Ethan are siblings. They are both equally the children of Rebecca and David. To suggest that Mrs. Harrison should have access to one but not the other is to validate the very discrimination that caused this situation in the first place." The judge nodded. "I agree. Mrs. Harrison, I'm going to be very clear with you. What you said to Sophie was cruel. Your continued refusal to acknowledge that cruelty, your attempts to maintain a relationship with only the biological grandchildren, and your escalating harassment of this family demonstrate that you are not a positive presence in these children's lives." Patricia started to protest, but the judge held up her hand. "I am upholding the restraining order. Furthermore, I am denying your petition for grandparents' visitation rights. You have not demonstrated that you have the best interests of these children at heart. You have demonstrated that you value biology over human decency. Until and unless you can genuinely apologize to Sophie and demonstrate a fundamental change in your attitude, you will not have court-ordered access to any of these children." Patricia's face went white, then red. "This is discrimination against grandparents. You can't. I can and I have. This hearing is concluded. We won. Completely and totally. The restraining order was extended for another year. Patricia had no legal grounds to force contact with our children. After the hearing, things finally started to quiet down. Patricia made a few more social media posts about the corrupt family court system, but her audience was dwindling. Most people who knew the full story had stopped supporting her. Even some of her own friends gently suggested she might want to consider therapy. Harold filed for divorce 3 months after the court hearing. He'd reached his breaking point, not just because of what Patricia had done to Sophie, but because of her complete refusal to take any responsibility or show any growth. He'd spent 45 years married to a woman who, it turned out, valued her own rigid worldview more than her relationships with her children and grandchildren. "I kept hoping she'd wake up," Harold told us when he announced the divorce. "I kept thinking she'd hit a point where she'd realize what she'd lost and make it right. but she just keeps doubling down. I can't do it anymore. The divorce was messy. Patricia tried to claim Harold was abandoning her in her time of need. Harold's lawyer pointed to the restraining order, the court testimony, and Patricia's ongoing harassment as evidence of why he was leaving. Harold moved into a small condo near us. He became a fixture in our lives, the grandfather Sophie and Ethan needed. He was there for Sophie's school plays, Ethan's first steps, Sunday dinners at our house. The relationship he built with both kids was beautiful and whole, and everything Patricia's could have been if she'd just chosen love over biology. James and Amanda remained distant. They didn't attend Harold's birthday celebration that year. They sent Christmas cards with generic messages. The cousins, Tyler, Logan, and Lily, grew up not really knowing Sophie and Ethan. It was sad, but it was also a natural consequence of the choices their parents made. Sophie thrived. 4th grade became 5th, then 6th. She made honor roll every semester. She joined the robotics club and discovered a love for coding. She had close friends, participated in school activities, and rarely mentioned Patricia anymore. When she did bring it up, it was usually matter of fact. I know Grandma Patricia didn't want me because I'm adopted, she'd say. But that's her problem, not mine. You and Mom chose me, and Grandpa Harold loves me, and that's what matters. For a kid who'd been devastated at 8 years old, she developed remarkable emotional maturity. Some of that was therapy. We'd gotten her into counseling right after the iPhone incident, and it had helped her process the rejection. But most of it was just Sophie being Sophie, resilient, intelligent, kind. Ethan grew into a rambunctious toddler who adored his big sister. Sophie would read to him every night, help him with his baby puzzles, protect him fiercely on the playground. The bond between them was everything we'd hoped for. We never hid the situation from Ethan as he got older. When he was about 4, he asked why he only had one grandma and one grandpa. Rebecca's parents were both living, but Patricia was the only one he'd never met. You have a grandma on Mommy's side, Rebecca explained gently, but she made some very hurtful choices, and she's not part of our family right now. What choices? Ethan asked, with that brutal curiosity of preschoolers. Rebecca glanced at Sophie, who nodded. She told Sophie that she wasn't real family because Sophie is adopted, Rebecca said. And that was wrong and hurtful, so we decided we needed to protect Sophie. Ethan processed this, his little face serious. Then he turned to Sophie. That's dumb. You're totally real family. You're my sister. Sophie hugged him tight. Thanks, buddy. About 2 years after the court hearing, Patricia reached out through Harold with a message. She claimed she was ready to apologize, that she'd been in therapy, that she understood now what she'd done wrong. We were skeptical, but Harold believed she was sincere. She's been working with a therapist who specializes in family dynamics, he said. She's mentioned you and Sophie in sessions. I think she's actually trying. Rebecca and I discussed it at length. Sophie was 10 now, old enough to be part of the conversation. We sat down with her and explained that Grandma Patricia wanted to apologize. Sophie's response was immediate and firm. I don't want to see her. You don't have to, Rebecca assured her. Whatever you're comfortable with. Sophie struggled to find words. I don't trust her. What if she says she's sorry, but then she's still mean? What if she's nice to Ethan, but not to me? I don't want to feel that way again, Mom. Then you don't have to, I said. Your feelings are valid, Sophie. You get to decide if and when you're ready for contact with her. What if I'm never ready? Then you're never ready, and that's okay, too. We told Harold that Sophie wasn't comfortable with contact, and that even if Patricia was genuine in her desire to apologize, the damage had been done. Sophie had the right to protect herself emotionally, and we would support that. Patricia's response to this news was complicated. According to Harold, she was hurt, but also, for the first time, seemed to actually understand the consequences of her actions. She wrote Sophie a letter, which we read before deciding whether to give to Sophie. That was surprisingly genuine. Dear Sophie, it began. I know I hurt you very badly, and I'm sorrier than I can say. I was wrong to treat you differently than your cousins. I was wrong to say you weren't real family. You are real family. You've always been real family. I let my own narrow ideas about biology blind me to what really matters. Love. I understand if you never want to see me again. I don't blame you. But I want you to know that I'm sorry and that the problem was never with you. It was always with me. It was everything we'd wanted to hear 3 years earlier. But it was too late. The wound was too deep. We gave Sophie the letter. She read it, folded it carefully, and put it in her desk drawer. I'm glad she's sorry, Sophie said, but I still don't want to see her. That's your choice, sweetie, Rebecca said. Always your choice. 6 months later, Patricia sent another letter, this time to us. She explained that she'd done a lot of work in therapy, understanding why she'd been so resistant to accepting Sophie. She'd grown up in a family that prioritized bloodlines, where adoption was whispered about and adopted children were treated as less than. She'd internalized those messages without questioning them. I'm not making excuses, she wrote. I'm just trying to explain. I thought I was being honest and realistic. I didn't understand that I was being cruel. I see it now. I'm so deeply ashamed of what I said to Sophie, of how I treated her all those years. Harold leaving me, losing my relationship with Rebecca, never knowing Ethan. These are consequences I deserve. But I hope that someday Sophie might be willing to let me try to be the grandmother she deserved from the beginning. It was a good letter, a real apology, but it couldn't undo the past. Rebecca met with Patricia once at a neutral location, with our therapist present. It was tense and emotional. Patricia apologized again, crying openly, admitting she destroyed her relationship with her daughter through her own prejudice and stubbornness. Rebecca listened. She acknowledged the apology, but she also made clear that trust, once broken so completely, couldn't be easily repaired. I appreciate that you've done this work, Rebecca told her mother. I really do. But my priority will always be protecting my children. Sophie doesn't want contact with you right now, and I have to respect that. Maybe someday that will change. But it will be on Sophie's timeline, not yours. Patricia accepted this. She didn't push. For the first time since the iPhone incident, she respected a boundary. Now, 3 years after that conversation, Patricia sends birthday cards to both kids. Thoughtful, appropriate, never guilt-trippy. She doesn't push for visits or phone calls. She doesn't post about the situation on social media. She's finally truly backed off. Sophie is 13 now, confident and kind and brilliant. She knows about the birthday cards. She knows her grandmother has apologized. She's chosen to leave them unopened, stored in a box in her closet. Maybe I'll read them someday, she told us recently. Maybe when I'm older and it doesn't hurt so much to think about. But not yet. Ethan is 5, starting kindergarten completely himself. He knows he has a grandmother he's never met, but he doesn't feel like he's missing anything. His family is full and complete. Mom, Dad, Sophie, Grandpa Harold, a handful of close family friends who become chosen family. Harold has built separate relationships with James and Amanda, seeing his other grandchildren when Patricia isn't around. It's not ideal, but it works. Tyler, Logan, and Lily are good kids, not responsible for their grandmother's choices or their parents' complicity. As for Rebecca and me, we've healed too. Rebecca still has moments of grief for the mother she wished she'd had, for the grandmother her children deserved. But she's also proud of the boundaries she set, the choice she made to put her daughter first without hesitation. I chose Sophie, she said to me on our anniversary last month. Every time I chose Sophie, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I know, I said. That's why you're such an incredible mom. The iPhone incident, that's what we call it in our family when we talk about it at all, taught us a lot of hard lessons. It taught us that sometimes people we love are capable of cruelty we never imagined. It taught us that protecting our children sometimes means cutting off family members, no matter how painful that is. It taught us that chosen family can be just as powerful as blood family, maybe more so. Most importantly, it taught Sophie something essential, that she is worthy of unconditional love, that adoption doesn't make her less than. That family is about who shows up, who chooses you back, who loves you without conditions or caveats. Patricia made a choice that October evening when she handed out those phones. She chose to hurt a child to make a point about bloodlines. She chose her own rigid beliefs over her granddaughter's heart. And we made a choice too. We chose Sophie. We chose love over obligation, protection over family peace, our daughter's emotional safety over relationship that had become toxic. I'd make that choice again every single time. Because Sophie isn't our adopted daughter. She's our daughter. Period. Full stop. No qualifiers needed. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be part of her life. 3 years ago, Patricia taught Sophie that she wasn't real family. But in doing so, she taught Sophie something even more valuable. That real family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about love. It's about choosing each other every single day. We choose Sophie. We always will. And that's the only thing that really matters.